Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're tackling something absolutely fundamental to your very existence, respiration, and how you manage to survive your body's constant, unrelenting energy crisis. You know, human bodies are the ultimate high-maintenance machines. We require a relentless supply of energy just to keep the lights on. Literally every single second, your cells are working tirelessly to rebuild themselves, pump vital ions, and keep you warm. So today, we're going to unpack exactly how your body manages this incredible feat and decode the complex biology that's keeping you alive right at this very moment.
Okay, let's dive right into a seemingly obvious question. Why can't you just stop breathing? I mean, sure, you pass out, but biologically, what is actually happening under the hood? Well, when you hold your breath, you're immediately cutting off the supply line of a highly reactive gas, oxygen. Think of your cells as tiny engines that are burning fuel every single second. Without that oxygen to burn the fuel, your body's energy production instantly fails. The machinery completely breaks down and life simply grinds to a halt. So breathing isn't just about moving air in and out, it's about delivering the exact chemical spark needed to keep your internal engines running.
So here is our roadmap for today's explainer. 1. The engine of life. 2. Powering the human machine. 3. When oxygen runs out. And 4. Repaying the oxygen debt.
All right, kicking things off with Section 1, the engine of life, fueling survival in every cell. Aerobic respiration. This is the absolute core concept for our entire discussion today. Simply put, it's the chemical process of breaking down nutrients using oxygen to release energy. That aerobic part is key. It literally means with oxygen. And the fuel for this metabolic fire? Well, it's nutrient molecules, specifically organic substances like glucose, which is a simple sugar you get from the food you eat. Glucose is the ultimate fuel source that your cells rely on to extract the metabolic energy you absolutely need to function. And this brilliantly illustrates the exact chemical recipe. We take glucose, mix it with oxygen, and boom! In this process, the chemical bonds of that glucose molecule are systematically ripped apart. Breaking those bonds releases the vital energy we've been talking about, which is often stored as ATP. But, like any engine burning fuel, there's always exhaust. The waste products left behind here are carbon dioxide, which you exhale, and water. It's an incredibly elegant, super efficient chemical transaction, and it's happening millions of times a second inside of you right now. Moving right along to Section 2. Powering the human machine. Where does all that energy actually go?
Well, respiration energy powers every single vital body function. It goes way beyond just allowing you to walk around. First up, cell maintenance. This means using energy to build large, complex molecules from smaller amino acids, that's protein synthesis, and powering cell division for growth and repair. Then, biological delivery. Your body uses this energy for active transport, which is basically moving molecules against a concentration gradient, as well as firing the electrical nerve impulses that let you, think and feel. And finally, physical work. This covers the obvious muscle contractions for sure, but also the absolutely crucial regulation of your internal body heat.
Now, I want you to consider this staggering number, 5,000. That is the estimated number of mitochondria found in just one single human heart muscle cell. 1. Mitochondria are the cellular powerhouses. They're the specific organelles where the vast majority of this aerobic respiration actually takes place. Think about it. Your heart beats around 100,000 times a day, and you never even have to think about it. To make sure that heart muscle never ever gets tired of pumping blood, it is absolutely packed to the brim with these microscopic engines.
And you can really see this when you compare different tissues in your body, because they vary drastically based on their energy needs. On the left, look at our high-energy use tissues, skeletal muscle, the liver, the brain. These are incredibly active and demand massive, non-stop amounts of ATP to function. Because of that, they have a very high mitochondrial density. But on the right, we've got low-energy use tissues, skin cells, fat storage, bone cells. Since their metabolic demands are a lot lower, their mitochondrial density drops accordingly. It's basically biology's way of saying form perfectly follows function at the cellular level.
So, let's apply this with a quick real-world scenario. Ever wonder why shivering is actually an effective response to the cold? Think about what a shiver is. It's rapid, involuntary muscle contractions. To perform those sudden contractions, those muscle cells need energy fast, which means a huge spike in aerobic respiration. To sustain that, your body has to rapidly increase its intake of oxygen and glucose, so your heart rate and breathing rate go up even if you're just standing perfectly still in the snow. The beautiful byproduct of all this rapid chemical respiration? Heat.
Your body is literally revving its engine just to generate life-saving warmth.
But there's a catch. This engine is incredibly sensitive. Because respiration is controlled by biological catalysts called enzymes, it's highly reactive to temperature changes. When the environment gets warmer, the rate of respiration increases, which is great up to a point. But here is the massive biological danger. If the temperature gets too high, those delicate enzymes denature. Basically, their shape warps, they break down, and the entire respiration reaction stops completely. This is exactly why super high fevers are so incredibly dangerous. They literally threaten the very enzymes that keep your cellular engines running.
Which brings us to Section 3, when oxygen runs out, the backup plan.
Picture this. You're sprinting at absolute top speed. Your muscles are working so intensely that your lungs and your heart simply cannot deliver oxygen fast enough to keep up with the demand. What happens? Well, your cells are forced to switch to a backup generator, anaerobic respiration. Now, anaerobic means without oxygen. So these are cellular reactions that release energy from nutrients in the complete absence of oxygen. It definitely saves you in a pinch, but there is a major downside. Because the glucose isn't fully broken down here, this pathway releases much less energy per glucose molecule compared to our standard aerobic respiration.
What's really fascinating is how the chemical reactions look totally different depending on the organism. In human muscles, during that intense sprint we talked about, the glucose is broken down into a byproduct called lactic acid. That is exactly what causes that intense burning sensation in your legs. But look at yeast. When yeast undergoes anaerobic respiration, which we call fermentation, it breaks glucose down into ethanol, which is alcohol, and carbon dioxide. It's two completely different biological responses to the exact same problem of running out of oxygen.
And that leads us to our final part, Section 4, repaying the oxygen debt, paying the toll for anaerobic survival.
So, the crucial concept here is oxygen debt. That lactic acid pooling in your muscles from anaerobic respiration, it's essentially repayable waste. Your body cannot just leave it hanging around. In high concentrations, lactic acid is straight up toxic. You have literally taken out a physiological loan just to finish that sprint, and now you owe your body the oxygen it missed out on while you were running. You need extra oxygen, even after the exercise is totally over, to break down that accumulated toxic byproduct.
So how do we balance the books? Well, your body actually stays in high gear even after you've stopped moving. First, transport. Your heart rate stays high to flush that lactic acid out of your muscles and pump it through your bloodstream straight to your liver. Second, intake. You are still breathing heavily, panting, really, to pull in that extra debt of oxygen required for recovery. And third, breakdown. Your liver acts like a massive chemical processing plant, using that newly acquired oxygen to break the toxic lactic acid down into completely harmless waste products. Only when that entire debt is cleared do your breathing and heart rate finally return to normal.
All right, let's wrap this up with one final challenge for you. Think about everything we've covered today. Why does a sprinter breathe much more heavily after a race compared to a marathon runner, even though the marathon lasts vastly longer? Well, think about it. The marathon runner maintains a steady pace that allows their heart and lungs to supply a continuous stream of oxygen, so they rely primarily on aerobic respiration. But the sprinter, they are pushing their machine to the absolute breaking point, far outpacing their oxygen supply. They switch heavily to anaerobic respiration, building up a massive reserve of toxic lactic acid in mere seconds. So that heavy panting at the finish line, that's the sprinter desperately taking in oxygen to clear the toxicity and repay a massive, immediate oxygen debt. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. I hope you now see your body's energy crisis in a whole new, fascinating light. Keep learning, and I'll see you next time.